the mixed messages we get about relationships. Welcome to the Hopefulist with me, Wendy McClure. This is where we turn those nasty, negative thoughts into positive and work toward a happy, fulfilled life. Now, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Hopefulist. I hope that you are having an extra special week. I hope that things are going well for you and that you're here for a little bounce in your step, that I can help you to feel a little bit more in your life today. Starting out with the quote of the day: good boundaries are all about self-love. Be the kind of person who loves yourself and who loves others. Boundaries. We've got to figure out our boundaries. And that's part of what I want to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the ideas and all of the incredibly mixed messages that we get about relationships from the time that we're very young. Now, a lot of the messages we get about relationships comes from the relationship that we see with our parents. And, you know, it depends on if that is a healthy relationship or an unhealthy relationship. You know, I just have to tell you, Tucker is completely distracting me right now because we had some people over to watch the Super Bowl over the weekend, and we put her bed, along with all of her toys, in this room where I am now recording this. And she just came in and discovered that her bed is in here full of toys, and she's getting those toys. I mean, she is just getting those toys. So if you hear a little squeak, she has succeeded. You should have seen her face. She comes walking in this room. She's like, there's all my stuff. I'm sorry. I'm very unprofessional. I let things distract me. Okay, back to the podcast. Talking about your parents' relationship. Now, often we see this relationship and we have nothing to compare it to, okay? So, do you hear her crying? She wants her toys. So we think that whatever the dynamic is between our parents is what a relationship is supposed to look like. Like, did your parents fight a lot? Did they ignore each other? Was it loving? Did they have a lot of affection for each other? You know, a lot of times we just assume what we see is the norm. And it's not until we get older and get out in the world and have friends and see our friends' parents interact that we realize that there's more than one way. So it starts with when we are children and the example that we have from our own parents. So what was the relationship like between your parents? My parents kind of lived separate lives for the most part. They didn't have a great relationship, and it was really, they fought a lot, and my dad drank a lot. So, you know, he would go out after work and drink and then come home. Often he would come home for dinner, then he would go back out again. And it just seemed like, I don't know, like it's one of those weird things where we were there for, you know, family stuff, I guess what he considered family dinner time. And then often he would go over to a friend's house or something after dinner. Oftentimes he would take us kids with him, but very rarely would my mother go. So I also had a lot of issues as I got older when my parents split up, and I kind of felt a little bit abandoned by my father. So I often sought that out in the relationships that I went after, I guess you could say, as I got older, through my teen years, my early 20s. I had a very big issue with abandonment. And in essence, what happened is I often sought out these people that would either abandon me or made me feel like I had to fight in order to not be abandoned. Do you know what I mean? So I had gotten this idea that I had to fight to stay in someone's life. And I often did. And I often made a big, huge fool out of myself because that was the example that I had, was that I had to fight to keep people in my life. So that's what I thought was normal. And let's just talk about society as another example. When you're in school, you're in grade school, Johnny pulled my hair. You know what that means? That means he likes you. So right away, and I hope this isn't still happening, but I have a feeling it still is in certain places, that's giving little girls the idea that when boys are being mean to you, it's a good thing. And really, how twisted is that? So twisted. And I don't even know how something like this starts. Sometimes boys will do this to get attention from a girl that they like. Just not the right way to go about it. We have to teach Johnny to not pull girls' hairs at all. And that if you like them, then to be nice to them, right? There's also a bunch of games that we play when it comes to relationships, And I've been back and forth, where I've thought, there has to be a certain amount of game playing because if you just, are completely honest too soon, then that often will scare a guy away. If you're sometimes you let your freak flag fly a little bit too early in the relationship, sometimes that will scare him away. So when I say games, like that's kind of the, hold a little bit of yourself back, be a little mysterious in the beginning. But game playing is not healthy. It truly isn't. We need to be honest about what it is that we want, what it is that we're looking for. And, just like everything else in life, it is a fine line. It is a fine line between being too honest too soon and being honest enough to let somebody know what it is that you truly want. This playing hard to get, so to speak, is not something that often works out the way that you hope that it will. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it just leaves you alone. And that's not what we're looking for. It's the same thing when somebody that you're in a relationship with is seemingly playing hard to get. If somebody wants to be hard to get, then let them be hard to get. Let them decide how they want to handle it, how they want to go about being in the relationship or the lead up to a relationship. This game playing is all just, again, mixed messages. We're constantly being told, well, show them that you're interested, but not too much. And, be there for them, but, you can't save them. We've got so many horribly mixed messages. And one of the biggest ones, this is the doozy. I can fix him. We think that all the time as women. Well, I can fix him. That is not something that you're supposed to be doing. That is not your job, first and foremost. And second of all, why do you want to get involved with something that needs fixing? We meet these people and we somehow convince ourselves that they're the one that we want to spend the rest of our lives with. And it doesn't matter what happens from that point on, because we're going to be there for them and we're going to fix them. And it's just setting yourself up for heartache is what it's doing. Because you're never going to fix somebody that doesn't want to be fixed. What is it that you're trying to fix about them? Is it something that they think needs to be fixed? Because if it's not, then it's never, ever going to happen. So some of the things that we also get so confused about when it comes to relationships is women's standards. Women, you need to have high standards. but not too high, you know. And women, you need to be able to stand on your own. Be independent. Don't depend on a man, but don't be too independent, because then you're going to scare men off. You're going to emasculate them. I just heard that word so much when I was going through my 20s and 30s. You know, don't emasculate men. Don't emasculate men. We have been taught that men need to be treated with kid gloves in relationships if we want to be in one with them. You know, we are being encouraged to be independent, to be successful, to do what we want, to get what we want out of this life. But at the same time, if you want a man, you're going to have to take a step back. And I do truly, I felt that. I felt that for many, many years. And there are a lot of men who still are very hesitant about women who are very successful. They can't handle it. There are some men who can handle it. And then there's the worst. There's the men who say they would love for their wife to be the breadwinner, to be successful, and all of that, and they really can't handle it. And I've seen that a lot as well. Oh, I'm totally fine if my wife's successful and makes a lot more money than me. But they really aren't. And they lash out. And they are constantly trying to do things to make themselves feel better. And in essence, a lot of times, how that makes them feel better, what they need to do is to put the successful woman down. You know, there's so much going on the subconscious level on both parties, and a lot of us don't know where it's coming from. A lot of us don't realize why we're even acting in the way that we do because of the things that we have grown up with and the examples that we have seen and the mixed messages we have gotten. And a lot of times that we don't even realize what's happening on the subconscious level in our brain until we sit down and deep dive it. And that's why journaling is so important. It's to get a handle on what is truly going through your mind. What is your thoughts about how a relationship should be? And why is it that you think that? And does that line up with the type of relationship that you actually want? Because most of the time, your idea of relationships and the type of relationship that you want are not the same. Because again, like I've said, you know, we've had all of these mixed messages from our example as from our parents, from being told that Johnny likes us when he pulls our hair, from getting the idea that we have to fight for relationships and that will make it worth it. No, none of that is true. And I was in a lot of really, really bad relationships. And I was in relationships that, you know, literally made me go crazy at times. That there was, you know, people who would just ghost me when we had plans. Like, and all of a sudden I just couldn't get in touch with them. I couldn't find them. And that would literally make me crazy. And I'm not, you know, proud to say by any means, there are times that I got in my car and hunted people down. Where are you? We're supposed to be out to dinner right now. What is going on? I wish that I would have just been like, okay, I can't find them. I'm going to McDonald's and I'm just going to go home. But no, there was something in this relationship that made me crazy. And for the longest time, I thought I was just crazy. And then I realized when I got into other healthy relationships, I didn't do that. And it's because that person didn't make me crazy. So I'm not passing the blame, but there were circumstances that made me more crazy than others. So if something is making you crazy, you really need to understand why that is. You know, and this is something that we can talk about for years when it comes to the mixed messages that we've got, the way that we have reacted in relationships and what we have learned from that. But here's just a couple of things to keep in mind if you are still in the process of figuring out why you acted certain way in certain relationships, and if you're still looking for a relationship, or maybe you are trying to help your children when it comes to finding a healthy, satisfying relationship. And here's one of the things that I've come to. And again, you have to know yourself pretty well. And that's why I always talk about journaling. I've always told people, if you have an opportunity to go to therapy, go to therapy. It's so helpful in figuring out and understanding yourself and why you do the things that you do, why you think the way that you do, and why you feel about all kinds of things. So don't go to others for advice. That is my big takeaway. Do not go to others for advice about certain relationships. I want you to figure out how you feel about it. What's going on in the relationship and how does that make you feel? Stop going to everybody else and saying, well, he did this. What do you think that means? And I know all about that because I did it forever. But then you get a different opinion from everybody. And oftentimes you go to people and you keep going until you get the opinion that you actually want, right? We've all done that. So how do you feel about this? What is going on and how is it making you feel? What kind of signals, hence sometimes red flags, is this sending you? And try to take yourself out of the equation for even just a little bit. And what would you tell your friend, your daughter, your sister, if they were in this situation? So try not to go to others for advice. Figure out how you feel about it. When it comes to starting new relationships, don't play games. Don't overshare too much too soon, but don't play games. Especially when you've gotten older, there's just no reason to play games. It's just silly. And be straightforward about that. Look, I'm not looking to play any games. This is what I'm hoping for. If that's with you, great. If not, fine. We'll just go our separate ways. But let's find out. But let's not play games, right? It's really not that hard to not play games. But yet it seems like something that everybody wants to do. And finally, the big takeaway from today is stop thinking that you can fix it. If there is something seriously wrong with your relationship, if there is something seriously wrong with the person that you're in a relationship with, it is not your job to fix them. And if they're having personal issues, then that's on them. And it's not your job to stay with them, even to help them through it. You can if you love them and want to see them through it. But just because somebody else is having issues does not mean that you have to stay there and go through that. What am I saying? What I'm saying is if you find out that somebody has a horrible drug problem, no, it is not your responsibility to stay with them and help them get through that. That is not your job. That is not something that you took on when you got into this relationship. And you are not required to stay and help them through that. That is not your job. And do not, because this is what people do. How could you leave him when he was having so many problems? Well, that's not your problem. That's his problem. And he is the one that has to take care of it. Now, if you love this person and you want to see them get better and they want to get better, by all means, stay with them. I'm not saying to abandon people in their time of need. What I'm saying is it's not your responsibility to stay and help. Okay? It's not your responsibility to stay and help unless you want to. This often reminds me of the show Breaking Bad. And, it's really just a matter of facing reality. there was a line in the show where the main character's wife was talking to, I believe it was a lawyer, and she had said, I didn't marry a drug dealer. And she said, well, you're married to one now, right? That's just reality. He had become a drug dealer. And she's like, I didn't marry a drug dealer. Well, you are married to one now. That is the reality of things. So, in her situation, she had to decide whether she wanted to stay married to him, the now drug dealer, or she wanted to get away from the situation. It doesn't make you a bad person. And people will try to make you feel bad for leaving someone in their so-called time of need. But again, this is your life, not theirs. And people don't have a say in how you live your life. Always remember that. You are the one that has to live with the problem day in, day out, at night, all the time. So don't ever let anybody make you feel guilty about the decisions that you make about your life. You can't fix people. People can only fix themselves. So this is just the beginning of a bevy of mixed messages we have gotten throughout our entire lives about how relationships are supposed to be. I didn't even get into fairy tales. Let's not even get into the fairy tales. Oh, Cinderella and Prince Charming and the White Knight and it's going to save us and all that. That's all been out the window for a long time now. But yet, all the little girls are still watching all of these movies. So, and reading these books and so forth and so on. So keep all of this in mind when you're thinking about the relationships that you're in, the relationships that you have been in, and the relationships that you want to be in. Because there's a lot going on in there. There's a lot going on in that brain of yours. And a lot of what you are doing and how you're acting each and every day is from a subconscious level. So that's why it's important to get in there and figure out what's going on under the surface, because that's where you find the real answers. So if you haven't been on my website in a while, please go check it out. I've made some changes. I'm very excited about it. And if you liked today's episode, I urge you to please share it with your friends. Something resonated with you, please maybe share it on social media. I would be most appreciative. And now I hope that you go on out there this week and be the big old badass that I know that you are. Now I'm always here cheering you on. Thank you for listening to The Hopefulist. Now, don't you feel good? Make sure you come back next week. See you then.